And Mike invited me. I didn't know I was going to be a guest speaker. So I didn't know until about maybe 15 minutes ago. Oh, okay. But Mike told me this was going to be his last meeting as president, and since I was responsible for him being president and I was there at his first meeting, I figured I had to come to his last meeting. A quick funny story about Stop and Shop. I was chairing the community board, and Stop and Shop came before us, and we had this public hearing. And the community board, sometimes we have trouble agreeing on the time of day. Never mind agreeing on anything. Well, we got the community board to vote unanimously for Stop and Shop. But during the course of it, I got up there and the chairman of Stop and Shop was there, and I said, look, I'm a little troubled here, a little concerned, because there's talk of Stop and Shop merging with the old A&P defunct company. And what we're really concerned about is a change of name. They're gonna call it Stop and P. He was like looking at me, he said, well, all right. But in any case, look, I didn't know I was going to be talking about history. I guess when you get older.
Whatever you want, Jerry.
Well, when you get older, I guess you live history, so I guess it's pretty easy to talk about it. Let me just first say that those of us in this room that live in this community, we don't know how lucky we are. I moved here in 1990, and it was an amazing community, and it was an amazing community before I got here, and it was an amazing community while I was here, and still now. I mean, going back, time and time again, this civic association stood up to save this community. From the days of Veronica, I don't know if you know about it, the people that are younger here, back in the 1970s, a woman named Veronica saw vigils right outside St. Robert's. And because of that, within a very short period of time, our community was overrun with thousands of people. Thousands of people. They were going to destroy the community. And she foresaw the ground opening up and water coming out, and it was going to be a modern day Lourdes. And she was called Our Lady of Bayside. And it was crazy, But the Civic Association, people like Bill Caulfield, who we named them all after, by the way, the president, other people like Alpha Stassi, they stood up, they got arrested, they did everything they could possibly do to save the community. And once they sued her, amazingly, they forced her to open her books. She saw another vision that it now moved to Flushing Meadows, which is amazing. It's amazing what money will do for you. But just quickly, anyway, those of us that haven't lived in Bayside Hills, understand that back in the 1920s, there was a company called Gross Morton that started a pilot program in Oakland Hills. And he built these little attached brick houses that were semi-attached. And they wanted to see how it worked. And it worked very well. Excellent. In maybe early 1930s, the old Belle Claire golf course, which is what Bayside Hills was, sold the golf course because they were going bankrupt. They sold it to Gross Morton. And Gross Morton came out and built these gorgeous houses with malls down the middle of the avenues, with cupolas and stanchions and archways, making this place one of the most gorgeous places that you could possibly go to. And because of that, the community we have today, people like Ronnie Kyle, who keeps it incredibly gorgeous, and people like, Sebastian and Mike, so many people have done so many things over the course of the years to keep this place an incredible place. And time again, this civic was at the forefront of everything we've done. Now, and I've been fortunate being chairman of the community board, which is like a super civic, and that's why I had to give up this civic when I was here, because I loved being it. I was elected president in 1996, and in the early 2000s, I became chairman of the community board, and it was a conflict. And I did it for a couple of years, and Mike didn't want to do it, but I had to drag him in. And I got to tell you, he's probably the longest serving president of the Civic, and one of the best presidents we've ever had. So really, he's done an amazing job. But time and time again, we stood up, whether it's Veronica, whether it's stopping floodings, whether it's fighting to redo the malls, making the place beautiful, doing 9/11 ceremonies, Memorial Day ceremonies. Constantly, the Civic Association has done things to make this place an incredible place, and we're very lucky and fortunate to live here. So I thank Mike, and I thank the Civic, and I thank all of you for making this place such an amazing place. Now saying that, just really quickly, just quickly give you a quick history on the Ravine project. Mike mentioned it a little bit, and I think it's worth mentioning because it was the first of its kind in the entire city of New York. Back before I was president, I think at the time I was beautification chair. I wasn't even vice president yet. We had a meeting in this room where the powers that be in the city, the environmentalists, were talking about a way of solving the flooding problem that existed, by the way. And the flooding problem existed because you have to understand the contours of the property, the topography. All right, Bayside Hills was built out of a golf course. There was another golf course a little further east called the Oakland Golf Course. When it flooded, when there was a golf course, that becomes a water hazard. I play golf, fine. I lost many golf balls in the water. But when the city of New York bought that property and built 203 Cordoza, Queensborough Community College, there was no place for the water to go. The stream, the spring that used to go right down the middle of it, which became Springfield Boulevard, got paved over. So the water had no place to go other than to collect in a bad area, a low-lying area, which was the area right outside here on 56th Avenue, which we called Lake 56th Avenue. So anytime it rained, because the sewers did not have the capacity of collecting the water would rush down the streets, and like Mike said, houses would list to the side. There was a gentleman who lived right on the corner. He literally bricked up his basement windows because the water would gush in like a waterfall. It was terrible. People that lived like Carol, people that lived, their homes were 4 or 5 feet above the ground. The water would be even with their living room doors. It was ridiculous. People would come out in rowboats, saved out, sunroofs of cars.
That's
it was
what they called this Bayside Hills.
Well,
the hills.
Well,
the
it
low
was
areas are where all the water went. If you were in a high area, you were safe.
Well, again, it's with the hills. They took part of the hills and they moved them to Flushing Meadows. That's back in the 30s. That when Robert Moses did that, they took the dirt from here, and that's what they used to fill in the Valley of Ashes. But anyway, going back, so it was a terrible place because the water we couldn't collect and nothing was being done. So before I became president, we had a meeting where the environmentalists came and they had this project that they called the Ravine Project, where they were talking about diverting all the water into the ravine to cascade down the ravine into the lake. Well, when I got elected, I told Mike, I said, look, we're gonna do something that no one has ever done before. We're gonna throw the entire weight of this civic association behind this project to try to solve the problem. Had never been done before, never been done. Now, I've been lucky enough because I was always a wannabe. I always wanted to be an elected official. I had friends like Claire Shulman and Pat Van and a few other elected officials. So we were able to get a meeting and an audience. And Carol was there, Mike was there, and I think Carol's video was the one that I used, which I made a presentation to Claire Shulman, showing her a bus going down the street with the water being halfway up the bus. How terrible it was. Somebody was literally out there in a rowboat, and she couldn't believe that this was Bayside. And she cracked the whip and she said, we gotta get this going. So the environmentalists came in and DOT came in and all the other people came in, the Environmental Control Board, and they started looking at the project again. And the initial thrust of it was that the project wasn't gonna work. The ravine was not big enough to collect all the water, so they had to come up with another plan. So the plan was to go down 48th Avenue. Now 48th Avenue goes up. Gravity has to make the pipes go down. So they had a trench all the way down 48th Avenue for about 40 feet. In order to put a tube that in some cases would be big enough to drive a car through, to solve this problem. Now, part of it, of course, was that they were going to take some of it and use what they call blue belt technology. And they took us on a tour. I don't know if Mike remember that. They gave us little box lunches. They put us on a bus. They brought us to Staten Island, and they showed us, this whole big thing where they took. And it goes back to the times of the Romans, by the way. This is not rocket science. Where back in the times of the Romans, they would take water that was very dirty, start at the top of a hill, use natural plant life, rocks, let it sift through and get sponged through the ground. And by the time it's at the bottom of the hill, the water is able to be, you could drink it. And so they were going to use the same technology and divert maybe 15, 20% of the water into the upper portion of the ravine, let it cascade down in what they called plunge pools. So by the time it gets down to the bottom of the ravine, it would cascade into the lake, and it would help the lake, because Oakland Lake was dying. All right, there wasn't enough water going into it. There was, I guess that green pond scum that you see forming on top of it. There wasn't enough oxygen. There wasn't enough moving water into it. And part of it was because all this foreign plant life and fertilizers and phosphorus and all sorts of stuff was building up on the banks of the ravine. So this was going to solve the problem. And as they moved forward, remember, this was a project as it developed. And we were lucky enough that I was still chairman of the community board. Because as we were going forward, they decided to pull the plug on the plunge pool sexy aspect of the ravine. Now we used that to sell the community because our community is going to get ripped up. And those that weren't directly affected by it didn't want this because nobody wants any type of disruption. Matter of fact, I had a huge war with Lakeside Towers because they didn't want us to tunnel down their street. And I remember the president of that co-op owners association fighting with me on the street because he said, well, this doesn't affect us. You know, and why should you take our parking away? We want to be able to go out and park our cars. And I go, well, that's not the way communities work with each other, you know? Tomorrow it's your problem, today it's our problem, and we'll make it better for you, which is what we did. But in many cases, we went through this whole aspect. The environmentalists wanted to pull away, and DOT wanted to pull away from the ravine with the cascading green blue belt technology, because they said it wasn't gonna work and it wasn't needed, and they thought they solved the problem. And what we did at that point, we threatened to sue them. You know, we went in there, I was an attorney, and I said, look, I'm gonna bring a lawsuit against you. It's that simple. Because I sold the community on a bill of goods. And if you read the Beacon back then, every week, every month, I was coming out there telling you about the progress of the ravine and where we were going and what we were doing and how great this was going to be. We were gonna have waterfalls in our backyard, and we were gonna be flood-free, and it was gonna be gorgeous, and the lake would be better. And I didn't want to be made out to be a liar. So what happened was that we were able to get a little trade-off. Okay, by that they say, look, there's no need for us to do it because we solved your flooding problem, which by and large it did. Mike, every time there's a little rainstorm, he called me up and said, we didn't flood, it works, which is great, and I'm very happy. But what happened was that in exchange for not doing the different things on the upper portion of the ravine, we got them to clean the ravine out. And that's what Mike was talking about in that picture. You see the little ribbon cutting? We have that little, I guess, path that goes around. Okay, that was supposed to overlook the initial plunge pool on top. Okay, but what they did is they went in there and they took out cars and they took out tons of rubble and construction debris and abandoned cars, like I said, tires and foreign plant life and junk trees and all sorts of garbage. And they cleaned it out and they made it a lot better. And they gave the overlook that we could see things and make it prettier. And then they agreed to come around and fix a couple of the spots, okay? Because they came back and they were originally saying that they couldn't, the rationale they tried using, so I remember I was with the Environmental Control Board and I was fighting with them. The rationale was that there was no nexus anymore between going in the ravine and putting these plunge pools in and the water. And he goes, because we solved your problem. And my thing was that, well, what about the other 5 or 6 spots on the perimeter of the lake, outside Bayside Hills, by the way, outside Bayside Hills, because there was erosion on several spots. And I go, if that's the problem, you caused the problem, because you allowed this problem to persist. And if you didn't address it, you're going to address it now, because if you're not, I'm going to sue you. And he said, all right, look, I'll get back to you. And I remember Padavan laughing, because he was there, and he goes, you got him. And within several months, they came back and they remediated 5 or 6 spots around the lake, which now, if you go there, you'll see they're much prettier and much nicer. The only thing left, by the way, was the path, which I'll talk to you about in a second. But in any case, after many, many years, Mike said it took years to build. They came around, but we had to lock horns and jump over hurdles each step of the way. Because the initial thrust of this was that they were going to go, tunnel down 48th Avenue, turn on 46th, go to APAC, and tie into an existing outfall, which would have dumped a lot of water into the Alley Pond Environmental Center. Well, they didn't like that, because this was dirty water. And they said they didn't want dirty water in their environmental ground. And I wasn't an environmentalist, they made me one. I go, what's the problem with water? They didn't want it. So what they had to do is they had to divert the outfall, and they had to tunnel across the Cross Island Parkway, tunnel across Northern Boulevard, and then what they did is they put a humongous retention tank on the other side of Northern Boulevard, right by Little Neck Bay, and they created a brand new outfall. And it's a huge tank with a weir in it, which basically it traps a couple of million gallons of water. And it'll capture it and hold it in place until such time as the water stops, and then they can pump it to Talmadge Island. And the pumping station was across the street. And if it's too much water, then it goes out by itself. But by doing that, it saved the Alley Pond Environmental Center, because no more dirty water was going. That's where the outfall was. It created this in wetlands, by the way, because the trade-off was that they had to create about 30 acres of new wetlands and parkland. So it was like a win-win for the community, as well as putting hundreds, if not thousands, of union workers to work. This was like you're checking off every box. It solved our flooding problem. It saved the community. It put construction union workers to work. It created parkland. It created wetlands. It was a win for everybody. And it was an amazing thing, because this is sort of like, if you read about it, Google it, you'll see how the Bayside Hills Civic Association took a problem, identified the problem, came up with a plan to solve the problem, and within a finite period of time, which was long, maybe 10 years, solved the problem. And other civics have copied that template and have been successful with it, but we were one of the first, as we have been the first on the forefront of many things. And so that's why I say how lucky we are in this community. Because having a strong, vibrant civic, it's everything. And again, I've been out there and I've seen other civics before, and they're good, don't get me wrong, but they don't compare to our civic. They really don't. And I know I'm biased, but we're amazing. You know, we really are amazing. And we have people like Mike who are willing to do the things on a daily basis. And I know Jack is he's got big shoes to follow, but he's a good guy, and he's gonna do a wonderful job as well. And you know, Mike is gonna be nearby to help him every step of the way. But that's what civics do. Again, and we did something, and historically, if you want to talk about it, we did something that was very big, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud to be part of it, and I'm proud to have done this collectively with so many people, because nobody does it by themselves, by the way. You know, if you say you do it yourself, you can't. It does take a village, you know, and that's what this civic did. And we solved the problem, solved the flooding condition, and by the way, because of us, Oakland Lake is viable now. The path itself too, by the way, that was another thing. We had to get the borough president. First it was Claire Shulman, then it was Helen Marshall. We had to go back in there because it's happening again, unfortunately, because there's a lot of water, groundwater. It's still caving in. And what happened for a while, you couldn't walk around the path. Now you'd walk around and you were like knee deep in mud. And I originally thought they were gonna put like a boardwalk around it, you know, and they didn't do that. They put like a French drain system around it, and they put, you know, tar down, and for a while it was very nice, but like anything else,
It only lasts so long.
can only last so long.
Yeah.
But look, that's amazing. There are other things we can do, from banners, from R2A. These are all things that we talked about and we did together. And I was proud to be part of it. And while I'm not as active anymore, because I can't be, because I do something a little different now that doesn't allow me to really be too active, I miss it. Believe me, I miss it. And you know, and Mike mentioned Paul Vallone, and look, Paul Vallone and I, and Steve, we ran against each other. You know, there was a war. There was a war back in 2009, because I wanted to be a council member back then. You know, it didn't work. Thank God. Thank God. Thank God. But look, this is, you're clapping that I didn't win? Most people, so was my wife, by the way. She's laughing. But look, but Paul Vallone, say what you want to say about him. You know, he did an amazing job as council member, and it's sad. He was 56 years old, and to die tragically like that. You know, our heart goes out to his family, and my prayers go out to him and the rest of his family, and it's a loss for everybody. But look, I'll take any questions if you want. I can talk forever, as you know.
We thank you.
Try to get me to sit down.
You did a lot.
Well, thank you, Sebastian.
What would we do without you?
Anyway, thank you. You would have done a lot without me. Thank you.